I am here today with Mark Stephenson. But Mark, I honestly don't want to waste a single second of our time together. So, if you could tell the listeners a little bit about your experience and kind of what got you into the tactical space.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I have kind of a unique launching pad into this. So, I started, fortunately, and for me, I've been lucky enough to be doing this for 38 years now. I really started as an athletic trainer and working in rehab. And that's where I got a little bit more experience working with some professional athletes and then really got into more strength and conditioning. So that's kind of launched me into my strength and conditioning trajectory. And, so for the first 7 years, it was strictly athletic training. And after that, went right into strength and conditioning, all different levels, high school, all the way up to professional sports. But I had this unique opportunity to go to the NSCA. And when they built their new facility, they had their new center, if you will. So, I was selected to go out there, and that's kind of where the tactical parts really launched. And, the part of what drove me to it, there's a few things. One is, you have your family and you see, these first responders, and it's like, okay, someone's got to save my family. I want them to be fit. All right. And, how do I give back to that area? So that was one reason. Two is, when you look at all the things that we're doing for professional athletes, and we don't put any of that into our professional first responders, including military. So luckily, being in Colorado Springs, it just worked out. One day, at the time, Lieutenant Thor Eels walked into our facility. He was the commander for the Colorado Springs SWAT team. And they were just looking at, hey, they designed a test for selection. Could we help validate it? Could we look at it? And we said, sure. And we started working with them on that. And that really just started to really just develop into more of a, hey, well, we can do this and we can do that. And then we started working with them to a point where it was on a day-to-day basis. It was really exciting because, they really had a thirst to say, hey, how do we get better? Now, not everybody was on board, as you can imagine, from the officers, but they were fortunate because they're a full-time team, so they could come every day. But the more we got into it, after a year or so, they saw their workers' comp claims go down on that team. And it wasn't something we were striving for. We were just focused on getting them better, than they were. So that kind of raised some eyebrows. And then we started doing a little bit more and started doing some really low-level research with them, just, monitoring when they're out there. What does it look like? And with the resources of the NSCA, we had a lot of experts in the field of physiologies that we could rely on. Simultaneously, a captain from one of the ODA teams at Special Forces, at 10th Group Special Forces at Fort Carson, was familiar with the NSCA, so he walked in. Hey, can I bring my team in? And we said, yeah. So that's really how that started on the hands-on part. But, we always had a passion to work with those folks as well. From a membership standpoint, we had some members in the NSCA working in the military and special operations as more on the medical side, but they were, still members of our association. So they started coming to us and saying, hey, what about this? Can you help with that? And we started looking at things. And I said, you know what? Why can't we develop something where, something more formal for these folks, for our members to, come to? And that's how the tactical strength and conditioning program was developed. And as you know, because you helped develop it with me, those folks really the whole goal was really, can we be a resource for our members? And that quickly escalated to, doing things with them. So during that time, I was actively working with Colorado Springs SWAT team out in the field and collecting information and things like that. So things were going really well. The consulting through the NSCA for the special operations community. Well, when the government decided they were going to put government employees for those positions. One of those units reached out to me and basically recruited me to go out there. So I left the NSCA and went to a Naval Special Warfare Development Group to start up their full human performance program. They had a couple athletic trainers there that were really the brick and mortar of it. So I got there to build the team around that as well to make it more expansive. But, it wasn't my idea. It was their idea. They helped. I just came in and just was able to start building around it, and it just kind of took off from there.
Wow. So kind of looking at that, what were the major differences between working with law enforcement and elite level soldiers when, transitioning into a military setting?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple differences. It's strange. Usually people ask me about sport athletes, professional athletes, and the tactical, but main differences were level of training. So understand, I went to a military unit that was a high level elite, unit. So the amount of training expertise they had, was, far superior from that standpoint. But not much in this mindset, not much. Now, because Colorado Springs was a full-time SWAT team, so they had that mindset was full-time, right? Whereas sometimes, as working with some of the part-time teams, that's a struggle for them. They got to switch it on and off. But the level of expertise and professionalism was really about the same, but the expertise was a big.
And probably resources as well.
Well, I was spoiled.
Yeah.
Anything we needed, we definitely were able to get.
Yeah. And I think that's the unique thing about your career pathway is, with your strength conditioning background, with athletic training background, that led you into a space where you actually had access to look into a lot of the different scientific practices that we were trying to explore and maybe have some access, I guess, to the tools. So kind of within that space, whenever you had that free range, what were some things that you explore as far as looking at from a performance angle?
Yeah. So the easiest way to set it up is the mission or the mandate that was given to me when I got there. Basically, here's a scenario. Our guys are at the top. That's not a problem. Keeping them there is a problem.
Right.
Sustainability. And again, this is, early 2000s, the wars, at that time, the battle rhythm was pretty high. How do we sustain the performance? Not just, month after month, but year after year, because you can't replace expertise. Can't replace that experience. And this is true for a lot of even in SWAT, it's anywhere from 4 to 5 years doing the job before you really become an expert at it in those settings. So if a guy rolls out at 12 years, there's still a lag on the next person being able to be at that expert level to come up. So how do we sustain that? And that's really how we start looking at it from the physiological sense. And, it's a lot of failures, which was by design, right? Fail fast so you can move on, right? Learn from it, move on. But what we were able to looking at that as, hey, bigger, faster, stronger, that's easy. We can write that on a napkin. And I tell the younger strength coaches coming in, when they all, to settle their expectations, a bad program is still going to yield results. It's just physics, right? If you go against gravity resistance, you're going to get stronger.
Right.
Now, how effective it is, that's a big difference.